Welcome once again. My name is Daryl Kwao. Thanks for joining us. Government has begun discussions with the IMF to review some aspects of the bailout program. The new administration maintains it is doing this because the current program structure makes it difficult to implement most of its economic policies. George Afe has more.
The IMF team which arrived in the country last night are hoping to engage government on all its concerns. The team will be in town for about 1.5 weeks and will end its engagement and later forward its report to the mission staff in Washington, D.C. The team is expected in town again later this month for the 4th review to look at how Ghana has fared under the program. For some, with rising concerns about data submitted to the fund, it is not clear whether Ghana could be sanctioned during the 4th review. But for Senior Minister Yao Osafo-Maafo, the IMF should see this review as being in their own interest.
We want to talk about deficit being not more than 5%, and everybody thought deficit was about 5%. The figures I'm seeing from Bank of Ghana, deficit is getting between 8 and 9%. Signal for the IMF itself to request for review, because you can't go on when you haven't met the targets. And therefore, the program will certainly be reviewed.
But for economist Dr. Eric Osei-Esibe, government must tread cautiously to ensure that this move doesn't send wrong signals to investors.
If they're going to go with comprehensive review, it can have some kind of credibility issue, some kind of policy consistency issue, and I think definitely it's going to have credibility issue. Development partners will tend to look at the government in a certain way.
Former Deputy Minister of Finance Munakote still doesn't understand why government wants to undertake this review.
I don't see why this new government cannot continue with the IMF program as is. I think it's a big cry over nothing. They should be able to continue. Again, investors are watching. Are you going to keep to the program or are you going to slack?
Government is said to be attaching a lot of seriousness with this engagement because execution of its economic programs can be achieved depending on how the IMF program is structured.
And we'll still stick to a story related to the IMF, and the majority in Parliament has warned the IMF is likely to punish Ghana over the alleged missing 7 billion Ghana cedis from state coffers. Speaking at a news briefing this morning in Parliament, Chairman of Finance Committee of Parliament, Dr. Osei-Esibe, insisted that money Dr. Bawumia claimed was missing from the books was hidden from the IMF and other institutions, which has now been revealed to the new government by a finance ministry staff after the NDC lost power.
How did this humongous deficit arise in spite of declarations to the contrary? What were staff at the finance ministry doing all this while? Now, the minority's reaction. In a response that could best be described as pathetic, the minority in Parliament sought to explain that the 7 billion of expenditures uncovered was due to reforms being undertaken on government contracts and expenditures, which is part of the gift mix project. So clearly, there's admission by the minority that the 7 billion cedis expenditure, which had been kept out of the purview of the books of government, constitutes rare expenditures that have been undertaken. So the deficit of 9.5% that we are talking about comes from data supplied by the Bank of Ghana and the Ministry of Finance. If you add on the 7 billion uncovered, then we reach the 11.5 that we are talking about as deficit for the year. The reaction by the former Deputy Minister, Ato Forson, which is sad and deeply worrying, depicts a team that is grossly unaware of the extent to which the nation's books may have been cooked to provide a false sense of good economic management and to deceive investors. More worrying is the fact that the former Deputy Minister attributed the arrears accumulation to reforms underway and the way in which data is captured. What the former Deputy Minister describes as creative accounting management is unethical and dangerous. The role of the IMF. We are of the view that given that the implementation of the External Credit Facility Program is still underway, the IMF stands in a better position to make some of these issues clear. As to whether this represents a breach of the ECF program conditionalities, we will know by the end of next week when the mission chief is expected to brief donors on his findings. We may recall that under the program, the government is not allowed to accumulate arrears. This may yet represent another serious breach of the program, and if care is not taken, punitive actions could be meted out against Ghana. Let us not forget that a similar occurrence in 2000 led to Ghana being fined $39 million by the IMF. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, we are aware of data integrity issues in certain institutions in this country. This new administration has promised to come clean on data, and we strongly believe that it is about time we cleaned up all the data mess. The change that has been fostered by the good people of Ghana presents a very good opportunity for institutions to come clean on data. So we appeal to all to come clean before the 2017 budget is finalized and read. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And we will just stay in Parliament because, as you may be aware, the Minister Designate for Railways Development, Joe Gata, is before the Appointments Committee, being quizzed by the Appointments Committee. Remember that created a lot of controversy, the separation of the Transport Ministry and from the Railways Ministry, rather, from the Transport Ministry. We'd like to hear what he has to tell the Appointments Committee of Parliament right now.